Okay, so let's get to our interview with the one and only Jeff Goodman, basketball insider and draft expert of ESPN and ESPN.com. Our interview with Jeff is brought to you, as always, by DraftKings. We're 2 months into the baseball season, and while the Boston Red Sox may continue to be a band of losers, that does not mean you have to be too. In fact, at DraftKings, you can win big and win big every single day. DraftKings.com is the official daily fantasy partner of Major League Baseball. Daily fantasy means no season-long commitments. You pick Joe Kelly, no problem. At DraftKings, it's like a brand new season every time you play. Just select 2 pitchers and 8 position players, stay under the salary cap, and you could be on your way to an enormous payday. Why wait until the end of the season to claim victory when you can win huge cash every day? Hundreds of thousands of fantasy sports fans just like you have already cashed in at DraftKings. Now it's your turn. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and enter promo code New England to play for free. You can win part of the $300 million in prizes being awarded this season. Use promo code New England for free entry now at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. Okay, Jeff, so last time we had you on, the Celtics were out west. We were getting ready to talk about who they'd pick with their lottery pick, and their stake was getting ready to be driven into their season. And I guess we jinxed them in the way. A complete opposite happened. They had some big wins out there, came back and went on the run they did at the end of the season. Lottery pick, schmottery pick. As of now, they're sitting at 16 with their own, have others as well. They have a Clippers first, Sixers second at 33 overall, another second as well. What's going to happen now here as we talk the next 20 minutes is we're going to talk about draft, and then Ainge is going to turn around and trade these draft picks for the next 5 years, and that's all going to be for naught?
You know, you never know with Danny what he's going to do here, but they're not in the spot we thought they'd be in. Certainly when they traded Rondo, we thought they'd probably go the other direction. But as I've said for a long time now, Rajon Rondo is one of the more overrated players out there. I think that's been proven now. And they trade him and they start winning. And, 16 and a late first rounder for the Doc Rivers trade, early second rounder. You've got potential 4 first rounders a year from now. Danny has got a lot of chips. He's got some contracts that are movable as well on the team. And I think everybody's movable in terms of there's nobody on this team that's untradeable for certain. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, at this point. Does he package maybe another first rounder for next year and try to add something, whether it's a player, whether it's to move up, if there's a guy on the board that he really likes? There's not a ton of disparity, after the top. I think there's top 4 or 5 guys, if you include Porzingis, talented 7-footer who's played in Spain this past year. And then you add in the 2 bigs, of course, Okafor and Towns, and the 2 point guards, D'Angelo Russell and Emmanuel Mudiay. After those top 5, there's a little bit of separation, and then not a lot of disparity between all those guys.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but it was very interesting. I remember actually, I think Ainge was on one of the radio stations. I believe it was 98.5 FM, the Sports Hub, when he even called this draft overrated. And I'm sitting here actually as a fan going, Jesus, Danny, you got 4 picks in this draft. You're supposed to rave about it. Like, oh, it's so deep. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. What do you think of the possibility that the Celtics do move up? Because I almost argue that, in a way, they probably almost have to move up because they have so many of these draft choices. They really don't have room on the roster for them. They have deficiencies on the roster. What are the possibilities they do move up, and who could they possibly move up for?
Well, there's absolutely, you don't want to load up with too many young guys on this team. They're already young, and I was talking to Brad Stevens about that in Chicago for the Combine, and he even said, hey, listen, I wouldn't be shocked if we can't keep adding all these young guys. I mean, you just can't, numbers-wise. You can't do it. So I don't know if it's going to be this year. I would think they end up adding maybe 2 guys in trading, whether it's for a future or whatnot. But they can't keep doing it. I mean, you just can't keep doing it. So I think Ainge has got, again, all these chips that he can try to play around with. And ultimately, you'd like to get a little bit more of an established player if you can that's going to help you win now, because now the expectations have been raised with the fact of making the playoffs this past year.
Yeah, obviously that is pretty much the primary goal is to get an established player. But in terms of the trade market, it looks like that guy really isn't out there, yet. Maybe there could be a sign-in trade. We obviously know who the big name would be via sign-in trade. But let's still sort of stick about this draft. I had Bob Ryan on the show last week, and I think he made an assessment of the roster that we can pretty much all agree with when he said the roster pretty much from top on down is a team of nice, 4 to 7 guys. I mean, pretty much everyone on this roster is a great 4 to 7 player. And the odds are, now granted, franchise players now have fallen in the draft. That's something I want to talk about a little later on. Odds are, even if you hit on these picks at 16, 27, I believe the Clippers, even 33 with the Sixers, that's pretty much going to continue that trend. Do you believe there are some top, players, in this draft that are obtainable if they do move up? I know you mentioned Stanley Johnson on the show back in January. Could he be a possibility if the Celtics probably try to move up to, 7, 8, 9, 10 in that range?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, I think there's going to be some guys there. How much do you like the kid Hezonja, from Spain, who's so talented, a wing with size, an athletic wing who can also shoot the ball. Like, if you're saying what do the Celtics need more than anything else, the kid Hezonja probably fits. Because, again, he's athletic. They need a big athletic wing who can also shoot the ball. That's what this kid is. He's got a buyout, but most people think that that's not going to be an issue, and he'll be playing over here next year. He could go as high as, 7. But if you're the Celtics, can you package, maybe he slides to 10, 11, 12, and you have a guy like him or Sam Decker or Stanley Johnson on the board? Stanley Johnson's big, strong, physical wing. He's not the most athletic. He's still got a little bit of ways to go, but physically he can come in and, and hang in terms of, he's a man already. Decker is every bit of 6'9". He's long. He's athletic. He's a streaky shooter, but I think that's the area where everybody feels like he can get better, and most guys can get better in the league. So, I think you might have to move up a bit to get an athletic 3-man that you want. I think there's going to be 4 men on the board for you at 16. Decent 4 men, but that's the last thing the Celtics need right now on this roster.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously about the deficiencies on this team. There's no question they definitely need more outside shooting. Who knows if James Young can provide it, even if that does come from role player types. But obviously a wing scorer that can maybe take over a game and, put anywhere between 18 to 22 points on the board, if it's not next year, obviously in the near future. Obviously, the other, clear deficiency on this team, I hate using the term because we now know that it's just flagrantly overused, like many other terms are in sports. Rim protector, I sort of stick with the old thing, interior defense. And you know where I'm going with that. Willie Cauley-Stein, most mocks have him as a fringe top 10 player right now. I mean, won't his stocks only go up when these workouts begin? Earlier this week, Phil Jackson was quoted discussing the emphasis of a defensive big man, and he clearly seemed to imply Willie Cauley-Stein, even though he didn't mention his name. Is he really going to be a guy that's going to be around there at the back end of the lottery, or is he going to be someone who shoots up the board here?
Well, I don't know if he's going to shoot up the board. I think he is what he is, where he's going to go somewhere in that maybe 6 to 10 or 12 range. So I don't think he's there for the Celtics at 16, but I don't think he goes to Phil Jackson at the Knicks all the way up at number 4 either. So somewhere in between. He's great defensively. The knocks on him, obviously, he can't really score. He's got no low post game. Hasn't really gotten any better in that regard. He's still a little bit of a quirky guy who people question a little bit whether he loves and is going to put everything into basketball. Those are the question marks with Willie Cauley-Stein. But what you're going to get is a big-time defensive presence, a la Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan, somebody like that.
Yeah, I remember when we actually discussed him on the show back in January. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong here. I don't have a good a memory, but I seem to remember you not being as high on him as, say, many others are, and you mentioned sort of his quirks, and one of them obviously being his dedication to the game of basketball. Obviously, that's something the Celtics have clearly put an emphasis on with Marcus Smart, and there's other guys, in this draft like Stanley Johnson who are apparently obsessed workers. Did anything from, January up until now sort of change your opinion on Willie Cauley-Stein, or, would you like to further emphasize on that?
Yeah, no, he's gotten better. I mean, listen, he played consistent this season, where back when we talked in January, it was still fairly early in the process for him to kind of show that he could sustain it. He did, and I think, you know what, to be honest, like, he's somebody, again, for the right team, he's perfect. But you got to have the right team. Like, again, you better have some offensive guys. Like I always said, Rondo was perfect for a team with KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. Right? I mean, like, he didn't need to shoot the ball. He didn't need to score. But on most teams, you can't play 4-on-5. You know, and that's what Rondo is now. People don't guard him. You better have a lot of weapons around you, and I think that's the case even with a center, which is different. But even like a center like Willie Cauley-Stein, you better have some dudes around him that can really score the ball.
I want to shift a little bit to something here. Let's say Boston does hold on to these picks, which, I mean, I just do not think that they will. Who are the
Not all three.
Yeah, but who are the possibilities with that Clippers pick as well as even that Sixers pick, which in essence is actually a borderline first rounder in itself?
You know, it's hard to say just because we don't know who's going to be on the board. Like, what do the Celtics do, you know, at 16? Let's say they keep two of the three. Okay, so at 16, let's say they do go with a wing and they go with a Sam Decker, you know, somebody, LeBron Hollis Jefferson is another guy that I think is very intriguing because he's really athletic, really tough, great defensively, not a great shooter, you know, and again, they need a wing who can shoot, but at that point, when you're talking about a bunch of four men, and again, you don't really need a guard unless it's a guard shooter. Devin Booker could be there at 16. One of the better shooters in the draft. I think he'll probably go a little bit higher. Kentucky freshman. You know, shot the heck out of the ball the first half of the season, then struggled a little bit the second half. You know, they could use, obviously, a knockdown shooter with some size. So I think if they go that route of more need a little bit with that first pick, I think at 28 or 33, you just take the best player available. You know, you just take whoever slipped that you think has a chance to stick in the league. And, you know, maybe I could see Danny Ainge going with a guy named Robert Upshaw, okay, who's as good defensively as almost anybody in the country, including Willie Cauley-Stein. But there are a lot of off-the-court issues. He was in rehab for 60 days recently. He's had some alcohol, drug issues, but a dominant defensive presence. 7 foot, started his career at Fresno State, got bounced from there, went to Washington. The Huskies were a top 15 team while he was eligible this year. And then he got kicked off the team, and they just completely tanked and didn't make the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, Robert Upshaw is a guy that I think if he's there at 28 from the Celtics, saying the heck with it. You know what? And Danny Ainge has done that plenty of times. Listen, he's taken risks, we know, on character. So will he take a risk on Robert Upshaw and all the baggage around him, saying, you know what, if he wasn't this type of kid, he'd be a lottery pick, which is accurate.
Yeah, and when he has all these draft choices, too, he is probably more inclined to, you know, take a risk like that, because if it does wash out, I mean, obviously,
right,
if the worst does come to happen with Robert Upshaw, and many Celtics fans are familiar with him, you say, yeah, well, you know, what the heck, you know, we did have, you know, 2 other picks.
Take a shot.
Yeah,
roll the dice.
Yeah, and that's obviously, you know, a good position to be in when you have that sort of flexibility. I think also, am I wrong here, but I know Danny Ainge really hasn't done this. How about the possibility maybe of, you know, picking an overseas player and then just stashing him over there with, you know, one of these later picks? Are any of those types of players available?
Yeah, I mean, there will be. Certainly in the second round, that's kind of the thing to do these days, is take, especially when you've got a bunch of picks. You know, look at what happened with Mirotic with Chicago. You know, Gar Forman and Paxson draft Mirotic. They wait a couple years, and look at him now. I mean, he's a terrific young player. And he's got some experience now, so he's not quite as green as some of the other guys that come over here as rookies. So I think absolutely that's something that they could do in the second round.
Before I sort of sift subjects here and talk more generally about the draft as we move away from the Celtics, pretty bland and open question, but I'm going to ask you sort of point blank, what do you think is most likely to happen for the Celtics with all these picks?
I would say they stick at 16, end up taking a guy that, again, will help them rolling the dice on somebody that falls that's maybe a 3-man or a shooter fits more of a need, and then I think they trade one of 28 or 33, and they could use one of those two to move up from 16, or Ainge could certainly try to take on somebody else, try to make a trade here. Get a little bit older, get a guy that can help them. I think they know in free agency it's going to be tough. You're not going to land a big fish here. You're not. You're not getting one of the elite players, I don't think. I mean, could it happen? Sure. The odds aren't high at this point because there's other franchises that have money as well that are going to go after the same players. And I think a lot of these players, whether they're restricted or unrestricted, are going to end up signing with their original teams here. Draymond Green is going to get maxed out. Kawhi Leonard's not going anywhere. We know that. LaMarcus Aldridge, I don't see coming to the Celtics. Kevin Love, I've said this before. I said it last year. I don't see him ever ending up in a Celtics uniform. Could it happen? Maybe. Again, I think Kevin Love is far more apt to either stay in Cleveland or go west.
Yeah, I do think, though, that they will. I mean, obviously, we're shifting the discussion here, and I do want to get back to the draft, but you obviously sort of laid it out there to offer my opinion. I do think that Boston is going to be aggressive using that money this summer, and I actually think they will, almost because they have to, even if it does require them to overpay for a player, be it like a Chris Middleton or Wes Matthews, who I know Jackie McMullen mentioned, because next year every team's going to have money. So if you don't use that money this summer, even if it is slightly overpaying for guys like Chris Middleton, who, God forbid, may even get a max contract.
Come on. Chris Middleton gets a max contract.
Like
oh, my goodness.
It's going to be like $13 million a year, though, at least 12. Am I right?
It's crazy if that happens. I mean, absolutely nuts if that happens. But, yeah, I mean, listen, who knows? Like you said, the salary structure is going to change dramatically. That's why you're going to see guys getting maxed out that probably you didn't think would coming into the season. And there'll be bargains at the end of the day because next offseason, it's going to completely change, and the money's going to go up significantly. So you're probably right. Spend the money now. But you got to spend it still the right way. Like, I don't want to give Chris Middleton $13 million, and he's a rotation guy for a playoff team, ultimately. That's what I think Chris Middleton, at the end of the day, for a good team, good playoff team. Like, yeah, he could start for you for the Milwaukee Bucks that are struggling, get in, or he could play minutes for the Celtics today. But does that mean he's a guy that you want to still, handcuff yourself with $13 million a year or something insane that's going to prohibit you from being able to get somebody better down the road?
Yeah, but like I said, that's the issue. That's the double-edged sword because, all these teams are going to be having money, and it's going to be tougher to compete with them in 2016-17. And Middleton does become an asset in his own right, not a huge asset when he's making, $12 to $15 million a year, God forbid. But it's almost like baseball back like 15 years ago. Remember when Mike Hampton was getting $120 million contracts?
Yeah.
We were like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And obviously there was a severe market correction on itself. I think the NBA sort of is in that little position now because whenever there is, these huge stimulus plans, if you want to use a government analogy, that's sort of what it is now. It does take a while for these owners and even these players to adjust, and I think that's what's going to happen now. And, hopefully from the Celtics standpoint, obviously they can adjust to it well enough, but I sort of stand by what I said. I think they almost have to spend the money this summer, even if it is overpaying for a mid-level player, because it's just going to be that much harder to compete, next year and even the year after that when pretty much 90% of the league is going to have that kind of salary space.
Yeah, you just don't want to add more mediocrity. That's my take, is you don't want to keep adding more mediocrity. Like I know what you're saying, and maybe you can eventually Ainge can trade some of these kind of decent players, and get something more for them.
That's what gives you another piece. I mean, it's better than nothing. That's sort of what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean?
I know. I hear you on that. And then I go back and forth with the fact of I hear you, but I also feel as though you want to save some of that money and be able to use it for your players if they do develop or to make a trade rather than just throwing the money out there for somebody that's just okay.
Or obviously for that white guy forward, which I do think is a possibility. But if we go there, that's going to be something for a whole nother day. I know you don't. But let's get back to the draft here and talk sort of more generally about it. You're around these players so much. I mean, you almost grow up with them. And obviously, when the private workouts begin, we obviously have the, who rises, who falls. Happens all the time. Who do you think is a guy, or guys for that matter, who can impress, in terms of a one-on-one ability and really shoot up the draft board, and who, in that turn, could fall for that matter?
I think a guy like Sam Decker. It's usually people that the guys don't think shoot the ball very well. Those are the ones ultimately, because they're going to have good shooting days, and Sam Decker has shown it over the course of his career that he can make shots. It's just a matter of being consistent. I think he'll have those days where he'll really make shots. I think Trey Lyles is another one. Really, really talented kid. Again, more of a four-man. Not really what the Celtics need ultimately. Kelly Oubre. There's a guy, too, that we haven't mentioned, that if Kelly Oubre is there for the Celtics at 16, which I don't think he will be, long, athletic three-man. There are a few of them. And, who are you, again, who are you targeting? And if Ainge loves one of them, can he trade up a couple spots and get a Kelly Oubre, get a Sam Decker, and not take the chance that one of them falls to 16, but kind of make sure if he's there at 12 or 13, can he move up a few spots and give up maybe the 28th pick or the 30th? Probably have to give up the 28th. But in some respects, the 33rd is more valuable because you're not guaranteeing as much money.
Yeah, that's sort of a discussion point that I have brought up. But, I mean, you're right totally about these workouts. Obviously, it's the last day of May here, Sunday, May 31st, and a ton is going to happen between now and the draft, which is, I think, a little over 3 weeks away. But now I'm actually going to put you on the spot right here. Obviously, we all know a lot can change with many players in terms of going up and down the draft board. You have guys that will fall to the 20s. Obviously, remember Rashard Lewis falling into the second round that one year. But I'll put you on the spot. Here we are, last day of May. Who's going first overall to Minnesota?
I mean, I've said for the last couple months, I think I was probably the first one to put Karl-Anthony Towns at number one. And pretty much everybody's followed suit at this point. I think it will be Karl-Anthony Towns over Okafor. He's better defensively. He's long, a little more athletic, skilled. People don't realize what he can do shooting the ball away from he could shoot the ball from three. Just didn't do it because they didn't need him to do it at Kentucky. So I think, to me, Towns is more upside. That's what they like in the NBA. And then you also add into the equation that he fits better, I think, with Minnesota's current roster.
Are any of those guys, be it Towns and Okafor, are these guys franchise game changers? I know we had this discussion in January, but has anything changed since then regarding those two?
I don't know if they're franchise game changers, but they're probably great number two guys ultimately at the end of the day on a team. I don't know if you're going to say, all right, these guys are going to be Tim Duncan. Okay, I'm not ready to say that, but I think, could these guys be Marc Gasol? I think they could be at that level, and Marc Gasol is maybe not a first-team NBA guy, but he's pretty darn close now. And LaMarcus Aldridge, they could be like that type. Not elite, but the next tier. I think both of them have the ability to turn into that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, too, when we have that, kind of talk about these players coming into the NBA. And even last year we were talking about the draft, be it Wiggins and Parker. And you said sort of the same thing in that, they can be great number two guys. It is, and we talked about this in January, how you're seeing less and less of these Magic Johnsons and David Robinson and Tim Duncan types that we knew were going to be great and we knew were going to change franchises. We really have not seen that since LeBron. I mentioned this earlier in the show. And now, actually, recently, you're seeing more and more franchise guys be picked later in the draft when the old dogma was, you have to have a top 5 pick. Granted, it's unlikely, but here you see Steph Curry go 7. He wins the MVP this year. Kawhi Leonard is a finals MVP. He was picked 14. Jimmy Butler was barely a first-rounder. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's evaluating. It's kids getting better. And I just think the league isn't as powerful. So some of these guys, coming in, I just don't think the league's quite as good as it was 5-10 years ago. So I don't think there's as many superstars. a lot of them are going by the wayside now. A lot of the older guys are going out. So somebody's got to step forward and take their place. And it's not an exact science, the draft, and a lot of it is fit as well. I mean, look, put Draymond Green on another team, and he might be a seventh man. But on Golden State, he's perfect when you put him with Curry and Klay Thompson. He's a terrific player. Don't get me wrong. I love Draymond. But again, you put him on another team, who knows? You know, who knows if he's even anything more than a rotation guy. So it's you know, where you're at. Are you going to be a worker? Are you going to get better like Jimmy Butler has? I mean, Jimmy Butler's a great example of somebody that just tough as nails. A lot of people did not think he'd be this good. His shot has gotten better. Again, that's what I always kind of point to. You know, the guy's shots can really get better. And, you know, again, it's evaluating. It's looking at some of these GMs and who's out there really watching these kids, because a lot of GMs, like Phil Jackson, aren't really out there that much. And it makes it more difficult when you're going to put more emphasis on a team workout when a guy comes in, rather than, you know, watching him over and over and over with the course of their team and maybe saying, hey, listen, they can do more. They can do more than the coach is allowing them to do. I think some people feel that way about Sam Decker in Wisconsin.
Yeah, obviously, too, me and you are going to agree on the second point I bring up. Obviously, with the one and done, I mean, a lot of these guys are still like growing into their bodies. I mentioned this in the opening monologue, but they can still have huge year-to-year improvements that they're having in the NBA, whereas opposed to they have in college. And then obviously, you know, they grow up and they mature mentally. And, you know, you mentioned a guy like Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard. If they're not in winning situations or environments where, I mean, you know, playing under great coaches in Greg Popovich and Tom Thibodeau, instead maybe we're in, say, you know, well, I'll just use poor Sacramento as an example, or Minnesota. You know, they learned a lot in those situations where they, you know, certainly could have learned that in college. And that's clearly where that one and done is hurting it, as opposed to, you know, back in the day when you talked about scouting. Scouting is now harder than it ever was. I mean, remember back in the day, these guys were on television for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row. And now, I mean, they're playing like 10 to 20 minutes a game as freshmen, some of them. And, I mean, that leads into its own, you know, quagmire.
No, you're absolutely right. It's listen, it's changed dramatically. There aren't many secrets anymore. Everybody, you know, you can see everybody on tape. The only secrets really are the international guys. They're not complete secrets, but they still have a lot less, you know, guys don't have as much on them as they do on the American guys.
Yeah, it's almost, too, sort of like my own little personal complaint about college basketball, like sort of how a lot of people complained about the NBA around 99, 2000, and that post-Jordan, post-Bird, you know, era. And we were just spoiled by those great players and great teams. I sort of feel that way now about college basketball, where you can't really develop these great teams anymore that we can get attached to at the college ranks the same way we do at the pros. Like, I think back to that was Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart teams at USC for football. You just don't have that anymore in college. And, you know, that's just fans. The fans hurt. We as entertainers hurt. But
no question.
Jeff Goodman, ESPN. You can follow Jeff on Twitter at GoodmanESPN. Jeff, thanks once again for offering us your free time, and look forward to having you again back here on Celtics Beat.
You got it, Larry. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you stopping by, Jeff. Great chat with Jeff. And right off the bat, let's get into our Reacht Question of the Day. www.reachedapp.com/CLNS or facebook.com/CelticsBeat. Our Reacht Question of the Day is being brought to you by Casper. Casper's Mattresses is an obsessively engineered mattress using two technologies, latex and memory foam, which come together for better nights and brighter days. It's a comfortable mattress that has just the right sink and bounce. A Casper mattress provides long-lasting comfort and support, and you can buy it easily online and completely risk-free. Casper offers free delivery and painless returns with a 100-day period, so you don't have to lie down in a showroom. Get a Casper mattress for $500 for a twin or $950 for a king-size mattress, and you can save an additional $50 as one of our audience members by going to casper.com/Celtics and entering the promo code Celtics. So here goes it. Reacht Question of the Day. We'll make it nice and bland and simple and creative for you. What should the Boston Celtics do with their 4 draft selections? Should they A, stay where they are, B, trade up for Willie Cauley-Stein, C, trade up for Stanley Johnson or some sort of athletic wing. D, package them for a veteran. Once again, can answer on reachedapp.com/CLNS. That's REACHTAPP.com/CLNS.